We have lived a long life. Some of us have not. But sometimes it's good to see that sometimes common sense resurfaces into the world. And sometimes it's good to see that, oh yeah, that was an obvious thing to do. And we finally have seen it after what felt like decades. The Green Bay Packers finally did something that the fans, and including the fan of the year, been complaining, been bitching, been requesting, been demanding, finally got. Hey everybody, I'm Cortez, and I'm a critic, and welcome back. We're continuing the 2025 NFL Draft recap, and we're here in the NFC North. And we're going to be talking about them Green Bay boys from Packer Nation. As we're talking about the Green Bay Packers, as they finally did the thing that their fan base have been saying for years in getting a wide receiver. Finally, they got the golden boy, and we'll talk about it coming up. Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers has been a historic team with bad breakups. At the time of this recording, Aaron Rodgers has officially been a Steeler for about a week now, Maybe, I don't know. I don't remember his schedule anymore. But Aaron Rodgers now a Steeler as he went to another North team, but not the Minnesota Vikings like his predecessor in Brett Favre, but he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mainly because he had him at gunpoint and basically forced their entire draft capital to be based around his yes or no saying. Talk about being a simp. So, Green Bay, knowing that one, the Bears are trying to get better, they got a quarterback that they believe is a savior. We'll wait and see. Minnesota basically said, thank you, Darnold, for your services, but get out. So let's see what the Vikings are going to be now officially under the J.J. McCarthy regime. And then we see, of course, Detroit sadly disappointing itself and its fans, and in a weird way, kind of like making wonder if that window's getting kind of closed in on them. So Green Bay, a team that, funny enough, I think we all were a little kind of hyped on the Jordan Love thing. Even I thought was, and that was before the contract. And now I think they finally did what everyone's been wanting to do. If they really want to give Jordan Love that much money, then you better give him some brand new toys. So, with the 23rd overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers finally select wide receiver Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas. Longhorns, hook 'em. So, I think Matthew Golden, in a lot of my recap videos, I was talking about him as potentially being roughly around this spot, high 20s. I thought he was a first round pick. I thought he might have gone to the Chiefs. He might have gone to the Bills. The Ravens, basically any team he was going to be drafted by, because he was not going to be like a top 20 pick, but he was going to be in that later round where basically everyone else is basically a playoff-bound team. That's where I thought he was exactly going to go. And funny enough, I think with Matthew Golden being picked up by the Packer was mainly because the Buccaneers at 19 picked Mbuku from Ohio State. So, because even I as a Buccaneer fan didn't think that was going to happen. But when that happened, I think Green Bay was like, okay, they made a pick we didn't expect to happen. We need to make our pick now. Yes, I know we're going to be mean to death, but we really need to. Because think about this. In the playoff game against Philadelphia, the Green Bay Packers receiving core was depleted by injuries. And sometimes lacked chemistry because some of the players that had to come in didn't get the same reps in a game-like environment. And in the playoff was like the worst time to be put into a litmus test. And Green Bay, I think a lot of success of Jordan Love was that he was able to have success with the receivers that he had that were considered second to third string type receivers. They didn't have a definitive number one since Davante Adams left. And even after Davante Adams left, Green Bay didn't really have a definitive number one with the receivers that stayed. So to me, that was the big fluctuation with Green Bay, that they didn't really have a definitive number one. Now, I thought Green Bay's offense was heavily built on the rushing attack thanks to Contu Jacobs, but Jordan Love got paid that big much money, and I can't help but feel like they need to kind of make that contract count. So getting Matthew Golden, which like I said, I think he was a big success for the Texas Longhorns playoff run, even with Quinn Ewers being considered flippy-floppy. This was definitely like, you have to at least get a wide receiver. And honestly, the sooner the better. And like I said, I think maybe they got kind of forced into it right away when the Buccaneers got Mbuku from Ohio State. So them getting definitive #1 receiver, I think Green Bay Packers everywhere are extremely happy and finally satisfactory. And I like the fact that my boy Matthew Golden went with number 22. So, get the 22 train rolling. Choo-choo. So the Golden Boy goes to Green Bay, and I think Green Bay Packers should be very happy, and the NFC North should be a little bit concerned. So after all the excitement, we kind of took a breakdown. And then to the second round. With the 54th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers selected Anthony Belton, offensive tackle, North Carolina State. Go Wolfpack. So, I remember David Bakhtiari. Hope I pronounced his last name right. He was the offensive tackle that sadly toward the end of his career was going through injuries. In and out. But when he was in, he was healthy. He was solidified. So, when they officially released him, I think in 2024, I think it was March 2024, I'm not gonna say the Green Bay Packers offense kind of depleted, but it's a big thing when you lose a legitimate, especially a tackle position, left or right. You really kind of feel that, that safety anchored on your offensive line is kind of gone, so you kind of want to find a way to replace it. Now, I'm not saying Walker and Zach Tom are not going to do the job. I mean, technically, Anthony is being viewed as the backup left tackle to Rasheed Walker. So I'm not saying that's going to be thrust into it. But I think when Green Bay lost Bakhtiari, because they made that decision, they really kind of felt like they had like a gap they had to fill up with security. You had security blanket for for over a decade, and now it's gone. And the sad thing is that he was basically breaking down towards the end of his time. So Green Bay, I'm not going to say that they kind of had a problem with their offensive tackle side, but this definitely feels like we kind of need to solidify it a little bit stronger. And if Anthony is ready to go, we'll probably get him in sooner rather than later, depending if he does in camp and depends how the season goes, injuries and play styles. But this feels more of, we definitely need a wide receiver, and let's get insurance for our offensive line and definitely the left tackle side. So Anthony, it feels more of an insurance for an insurance policy, because this also adds to, we want to protect Jordan Love for all the money we gave him. So we kind of need to make sure that for the next 10 years and so on, Jordan Love is protected. So we go to the third round. And with the 87th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers selected Savion Williams, wide receiver, TCU. TCU wide receivers, Quentin Johnson just comes into the hell. But oh my God, Green Bay goes wide receiver. They go for 2 and get 2 W2s. Wide receiver. Now, I said before, I think Jordan Love, on his first debut as the Green Bay Packers starting quarterback, he really proved himself valuable. I mean, his stats was much more superior than I thought it was. And that last half the season surge into the play and then crushing the Dallas Cowboys and scaring the crap out of San Francisco was wonderful. But I really felt like Green Bay didn't have the receiver department they wanted. And then getting Savion Williams, I mean, as of right now, Savion Williams is being viewed as probably with the starting 6 wide receivers they have now. And remember, Christian Watson, they were highly wild on him, and he has been sadly a little more injury prone than they probably would have liked. But when he's healthy, he's dynamic. But it just feels like the chemistry with Love and Watson always has been not fully connected because Watson keeps getting hurt. And now, according to the ESPN depth chart, Reed, Golden, and Dobbs are considered the starting 3 wide receivers, while Watson, Wicks, and Williams, that's Savion, are being viewed as that. So this could potentially be a rotation side. For all I know, Williams, I mean, we have seen Green Bay Packers history of wide receivers that come in as the 3rd or 4th stringer and then become starters. Jordy Nelson, anybody? I think Randall Cobb really blew up to the screen in his opening debut game against the Saints. Kickoff return and a touchdown reception. And he became one of the most likable Green Bay Packer wide receivers out of Kentucky. So to me, this feels more of insurance, but also we want to make sure that there's no setback in case things get worse because, that playoff game against Philadelphia, their entire receiving corps was depleted and they were trailing. They had no choice but to throw And when the chemistry and timing is off, basically it was just thrown against air. And there was no one there. So that's not really fair. I made rhymes. So to me, this feels more of, kind of not more of a why not, but saying, okay, we got Golden. Let's just double down on the wide receivers. Almost as if to like overcompensate the past drafts where they don't draft a wide receiver early. And kind of give the Packer faithful, be like, we heard you, we're getting another receiver. And the first 3 picks, they've gotten offense. All designed to what? Say it with me now. Help Jordan Love. Then we go to the 4th round. With the 124th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Barrion Sorrell, edge, Texas. Okay. Just realized that 3 of the first 4 picks all from Texas. Green Bay. What are you taking people from the Lone Star State, taking them to the coldest tundra of the United States? What is wrong with you, Green Bay? How dare you? So, I thought the Green Bay Packers defense has been one of the bright spots, because when you think of Green Bay, when I grew up watching Green Bay, it was always Antonio Freeman, it was always Walker, it was Bubba Franks, it was Brett Favre, it was Armand Green. You know, I grew up with the original NFC Central when Tampa was part of that group. And I always thought Green Bay was always more of an offensive team. I mean, yes, they had, defensive stars here and there, but I think until that Super Bowl run with Aaron Rodgers, I feel like Green Bay kind of solidified themselves as a defensive side. And even during the year where Rodgers was injured or, not playing to his 100%, Green Bay's defense was led by Clay Matthews and company. And the past few years, I still thought Green Bay's defense was kind of like the unsung hero, even though, Rashad Gray, Quinn Walker, and, the recently, sadly departed by the time of this recording, Alexander, I thought Green Bay's defense was one of its surprising bright spots. Kind of made Green Bay one of the most balanced teams. So then getting them another pass rusher, and I love that they're going back to a 4-3 defense. I think the 3-4 defense only works if your outside linebacker does have that Khalil Matthews type of, tenacity, where basically you just use it to rush the passer. But if you have real good pass rushers, then a 4-3 defense probably speaks better, because then you have 4 down linemen, and it kind of helps out the linebackers too. And I think that's more designed than anything else. And I think Green Bay kind of really want to go more of a balanced defensive front anyway. So they have Barry, and Barry is currently being viewed as the backup defensive end rotation with a former first-round pick in Luca Van Ness, who I thought was not utilized really in the 3-4 defense. So here, as a 4-3 defense, I think Van Ness could have a step up. And then with Barry coming in, rotation side, I still believe Green Bay could be a top 10 defense. Everything goes right. And with the offense getting legitimized with more and more talent, Green Bay could be a threat just on health alone and scheme, like I said, on paper, but it still could be something positive for the Packers. And this to me feels more of depth. Then to the 5th round, with the 159th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers selected Colin Oliver, linebacker, Oklahoma State. Man, you're just taking everybody from the Big 12, aren't you? Texas technically SEC, but I'm still calling Big 12 for at least another year. But yeah, you're just going to that, South Texas, Oklahoma vibe area, aren't you, Green Bay? Man, what do you see in that part of the world? Now, looking at linebackers here, they have Oliver currently being viewed as, honestly here, as a defensive end. Now, I always want to double check my notes, but yeah, he was a defensive end, but he was a linebacker in college. I mean, he's 6'2", 240, so that kind of screams a little bit more linebacker-esque. So, but I feel like he's probably being utilized more as a pass rush specialist. Probably will see him more on 3rd down. Probably not so much rotation. Maybe he gets utilized more. Maybe becomes like a bandit type player where he comes as a linebacker. Basically, he's just designed like a Devon. Look what Devin White was in Tampa, where he's a linebacker, but one of his greatest strengths was his ability to blitz. And maybe that's what they have him for right now. Because 6'2" for a defensive end, it's kind of short. And feels more like a linebacker, but they have him currently being viewed as a defensive end, third string. I feel like he's a rotation and basically a sack rushing specialist, which seems kind of a weak pick if that's the design, that he's meant to be just to sack quarterbacks on third down in big key situations. We'll see what preseason does. Of course, he'll get a lot more playing time because starters don't usually play, and see how much he develops. But this feels more of he is good at sacking and rushing quarterback in blitz package, and maybe that's just enough to evaluate him, and maybe they can develop him into an actual, every down type player. But right now, he was a linebacker in college. He's a defensive end here. I'm going to say he's a blitz specialist. Then we go to the 6th round. With the 198th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers selected Warren Brinson, defensive tackle, UGA. So we started the round with 2 receivers and offensive tackle for Jordan Love. And then they said, okay, I think we made the Packer faithful calm. Now we can do what we want to do. Let's get our defense, up to par. So they go defensive tackle with Warren Bison, and Warren is currently being viewed as the right defensive tackle as a second stringer behind Devontae Watt. So usually when you're a backup player, I can help. I feel like it's meant for rotation, not so much a starter. And for a guy being picked at 198, being a backup already on a team that's considered one of the most competitive teams in the NFC, so the chance of you going to the playoffs and further is high. So who knows how much closer you get to a ring in your first year or first years. So to me, this is more for rotation. Same thing with Byron Sorrell. This is meant for we want to rotate young, fresh talent just to give our veterans a rest here and there. So this feels more like they're getting backups to rotate and not really being forced that he's going to be our starter next year. I think this is meant for, we're not going to force him into the starting lineup, but he is probably going to play a big chunk of our defensive scheme because we kind of want to keep our players healthy. And if, let's just say, everyone in the NFC North becomes a top-tier offense, JJ develops well into the Vikings, and the Lions are the Lions, and Chicago finally gets Caleb Williams, and that whole thing with Benny Johnson, all that. I think Green Bay is doing this to say we're going to be competing with potentially top 12 offenses in our own division. That's 6 games against top tier offense. We might want to get our defense up to par because our offense looks like we might have to have some shootouts. This could be a division where it's 28-25 type games. It could be back and forth. And whoever has the better defense to get that one crucial stop or force a punt or even force a field goal, that could be the key. And this is probably what Green Bay is so, loading up on defensive players for depth, rotation, and for potentially the future of this division. Because, like I said, if Caleb Williams proves his worth and doesn't have a sophomore slump after having a kind of a slumpish rookie season, not really his fault, but kind of is, because you get number 1 overall pick, you get that pressure, deal with it. This is meant to potentially be the most competitive division out there. So Green Bay look like they're loading up for the future. Then we go to the 7th round. With the 237th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers selected Micah Robinson, cornerback, Tulane. Now, it's been a few days that they have officially announced Alexander, like I said, the time of this recording, Alexander has been officially, he says, here's your papers, good luck to you. So, understandable, Alexander probably one of the better defensive players for the Packers for a few seasons, but injuries probably really did derail his trajectory. And some may even say his attitude, his ego, his pride, his courage, his charisma, his swagger, his vibes, whatever you want to call it. Some people didn't appreciate it all that much, and some just were like, dude, you're so annoying, God. But Alexander's gone. Do I believe Robinson's coming in meant to replace him? No. But I can't help but feel like Alexander was your Pro Bowler. Alexander was one of your better corners against these top receivers in their own division. You kind of want to make sure that the defensive back that are coming into the starting lineup are not going to be forced into a play where basically they're the only thing left. Plus, you kind of want to develop a young player coming in. Definitely want to get opportunities for it. Tulane wasn't a bad team last year. They were actually one of the better teams in the American Conference, even though Tulane, when you think of Tulane, you think of I think I heard a good jambalaya place right next to the university, though. That's probably one thing people think about Tulane nowadays. So this is probably meant 100% for depth, development, for the future, special team contributor. And who knows? I mean, he's currently being viewed as the backup to Nixon on the right side. So obviously, they probably have high expectation for him. But this is another defensive player the Packers got that is already a backup, regardless of where they're drafted. And I can't help but feel like they're trying to load up backups and rotation for these young guys into the starting lineup. So therefore, the next 5-10 years on the line, the Packers have a nice solidified front that they have drafted themselves and don't have to rely on free agency to make up for the lack. And then the last pick in the 7th round for the Packers, with the 250th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers selected John Williams, John Williams, offensive tackle, Cincinnati Bearcats. All right, so we ended off by getting, I guess, another insurance policy for the offensive line. John Williams, and funny enough, he's viewed as the backup to Anthony, who they just drafted number in the 2nd round to it. So they literally doubled up the double up. They got a backup offensive tackle potentially for the left tackle behind Rasheed Walker. And then they got John Williams, who they project him to be a backup to Anthony. Now, we all have seen that sometimes offensive tackles get moved to inside or get moved to the opposite side of the ball. We have seen it more times than not. So who knows if whatever happens, Belton takes the left tackle position and he's successful. John Williams, I have even seen offensive tackles get moved to center, and they were drafted as tackles. Sometimes being, have diversity in your skill sets could make it more valuable. But right now, John Williams is being viewed as an offensive tackle, and on the left side behind another rookie, and right now behind the current starter, projectedly by Rasheed Walker. So this feels a little bit more like incentive and insurance. We're double down, double check, discount, double check. Something that Aaron Rodgers used to do on State Farm for years. So that's what I feel like the Packers did. And that's the Packers' entire draft class. Like I said, a nice solidified of players. They address a lot of key issues. They doubled down a lot of them. So to me, this feels very much probably a very balanced Packers team. No player or no position that was addressed felt kind of a stretch. The grade I give the Packers, like I said, a lot of it's based on what they have, but I got to give them contenders. I know calling a team contenders in the division where basically this could be another division that could be in the conversation for everybody making the playoffs. Like, seriously, I'm still waiting for that one time to happen. And I think the NFC North has that potential, but it all depends on teams like the Vikings and the Bears, doing their part. So I'm going to give the Packers contenders because they've addressed major key issues in the receiving side especially. And the defense has backups already to rotate with the starters. So I feel like they kind of addressed the coaching staff situations with certain personnel and making some obvious decision they probably should have made 2 or 3 seasons ago, and they finally did it. So this feels like that. And the player I'm most excited about for the Green Bay Packers is Matthew Golden. One, he's wearing number 22, so we got to represent the 22 class here. But also, he is the wide receiver that Green Bay Packer Nation was all in a massive thing. And the game, remember, the draft was in Wisconsin, so there's like this massive sonic wave of finally, sweeping across all over the land. So of course, not to say I'm pressuring him, but I kept putting him in multiple teams as he's going to be on this team potentially. He's going to be on that team potentially. But I did believe he was going to be on a team that made the playoffs last year. And where he was going to go to, he was already going to be in a great situation. And Green Bay happened to be the team that picked him. So I am very happy for him. And I definitely want to see how much of an impact he can do right away. Because let's be real, I think Matthew Golden is probably the most definitive number 1 wide receiver they have. Reed is definitely their speed guy, and Dobbs is definitely their possession receiver right now. And we'll see Watson's injury, but to me, Golden is the guy I think we also be very excited. One, he's a first-round pick by the Packers wide receiver, and I feel like he has raised his draft stocks very end of his career in Texas, even though he was a transfer from Houston. So that is the Green Bay Packers. We are done with the Packers. We're moving on to the rest of the NFC North. So we went to the Packers. Let's go to the rivals. We're going to Chicago to talk about the Bears as Benny Johnson and company have now picked their players and their choices, and we're going to see how they're going to do, knowing that if expectation wasn't already high on Caleb Williams, this is going to be more pressure. And the sad thing is, he's basically starting from scratch again because now he has to learn a whole new coach in his second year. Talk about drawing the short end of the stick twice. So we'll talk about the Bears next time. But until then, I'm Cortez, and I'm a critic. Thank you so very much for watching.